Hi everyone, welcome to another SheClicks webinar. Today I'm really pleased that we've got Amy Shaw speaking to us. She is probably best known as an automotive photographer, and I think, Amy, we first met, I think it was at the D850 launch, the Nikon D850 launch.
Yeah, that was my first ever thing for Nikon. So yeah, I met you very early on.
Were you an ambassador at that point, or was that before you became an ambassador?
I became an ambassador about 3 days before that, and then they said, "Oh, can you come to this event?" And I was like, "Ah, yes, okay then."
Because you had the most amazing setup. It was like when we were in a warehouse, and it was like they'd set up, or maybe you'd set it up, I don't know, like a vintage garage, and there was a model in there and a nice old car, and we all got to take photographs with the D850. So that was great fun.
It was. I was so blown away with that as like the first event. I was like, "This is amazing." So yeah, that was a really great first way to kind of be introduced to Nikon and the team there.
So yeah, I mean, they are a really great team. They're a nice bunch of people. Mm-hmm. So you are going to talk to us about You're Doing Fine.
Yes.
Intriguing title.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know about yourself or the rest of us, but there's been so many times of my own career and just even before it's profession, just my hobby, where I just thought, am I doing this right? And panicking a little bit and getting put off or whatever. So I kind of wanted to go through that question, but extensively. So I hope it's okay.
I'm sure it is. Great. Okay, well, over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm now going to go and share my screen. So bear with me while I set this up. As you all know, hello, I am Amy Shaw, and I've been shooting cars and motorbikes professionally for precisely 6 years, 9 months and 10 days, I think. I've probably been thinking, am I doing this right, for roughly 6 years, 9 months and about 2 days of that. Periodically, I have an overly confident day in which I think I am doing actually all right, I can do this. And that's often following a couple of glasses of red wine and quite a positive work email telling me that somebody liked my images. So yeah, in a world where we are surrounded by stories and images of success, it can sometimes be really hard not to judge ourselves harshly in comparison. But I mean, the thing to remember is it's very easy to compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. So the first question that people usually ask me is, how did you become a photographer, and how do I become a professional photographer too? How does one go from being an amateur photographer to a fully freaking out, tax-paying professional photographer? And in my case, it was accidentally. I was a poor graduate, still living at home with my parents at the age of 22, having got a very helpful degree in silversmithing. Photography was purely my hobby. I'd shot a few weddings of my friends and had been asked to do a few headshots, and I just like playing around with my camera, as many of us do when we first get into photography. I knew that I could possibly make some money as a photographer, I mean, more easily than making people buy my badly made jewelry anyway. So I had taken the plunge, and with the last of my student loan, bought myself a Nikon D600 and an iMac. So when I first started, this was my entire setup, and I'm sure that many of you watching have got more than this now. I got my D50 from my parents when I was 16 as my very first camera, so I still had that and the kit lens, along with the D600, a Nikon 50mm 1.8, and an iMac, and at the time it was the 2012 iMac. At this point, I'd managed to roughly get about 3 weddings a year, and that wasn't really enough to become a fully functioning adult paying my own rent. I had a basic website with albums of images that I'd already shot, but that was the extent of my photography career. Then after about 1 month after just picking up my scroll in my graduate gown, I shot 3 things that would change my life forever. A stunning wedding was the first thing, a car, and an event which some of you will already know called the Goodwood Revival. The wedding was an absolute corker. It's still one of my favorite weddings to this day. At least 2 of the guests from that wedding actually hired me for their own weddings, and I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 of each of their weddings hired me again. So it kind of snowballed from there on the wedding side of things. The bride also submitted the day to a wedding blog, which ended up getting quite a lot of traction. And within about a year, I'd shot 10 weddings. The second thing I shot was this very pretty car. The car was built by family friends of ours, and they asked if I could take some photographs of it with my nice new camera for their own reference. I'd never shot a car in my life, so after some, honestly, frantic Googling the night before of how to photograph a car, I just took the knowledge that I knew of photographing bride and grooms and applied that to photographing a car. I looked at the shape of the car, decided on what I thought were the best angles and details, and shot what I felt just were nice images of something I knew nothing about. The builders of the car asked me to take some specific shots, which I later learned were standard shots for any car shoot ever, like side on, front three quarters, rear, etc. But other than that, I kind of had free reign. So my joy in photography has always been photographing people, ever since I started off, shooting with my very first camera. So once I was on this shoot, that's what I did. I shot the people that were around. This is actually a shot of my dad. I ended up putting those images too on my website and shared them on my Facebook page, hashtagging things like Ferrari or Ferrari P4. And about a month later, I found that those images went viral online thanks to a few people who shared those images. An American car website called Petrolicious found those images and asked me if I could shoot some cars for them in the UK. Now, they didn't pay their photographers quite a lot of money at all, but I didn't know that at the time. And at the time, their fee, I was happy to work for that. I'd never shot for anybody in the car world. I didn't know what kind of was, what was meant to be the standard rate. And the other benefit for this was that they had a lot of social media followers. So my images began to be seen worldwide. I'd be given a list of cars that they wanted me to shoot, and then I'd go to a local car meeting with my dad, because I knew nothing, honestly, nothing about cars when I started. And he'd be the person that'd have to point them out to me saying, oh, that's a Series 1 Land Rover, whatever. I'd approach the owner and asked if they mind spending a morning with me just so I could shoot their car. And almost everybody that I asked said yes. So a quick tip for you, if any of you are wanting to get into car photography, take the car away from the car event. Car photography is never just about the car, just like weddings are never just about the bride and groom. It will do your portfolio wonders to spend time actually setting up the shoot somewhere afterwards. These shoots got noticed by other car magazines, and I began to get new car-related shoots come my way in this crazy snowballing manner. And then finally, after the wedding and the car shoots, I went to what's called the Goodwood Revival. My dad took me because he knew that I like shooting people, and this event is so much more than just the cars on tracks. It's an event where about 150,000 people dress in period clothing and relive classic racing. The event is so much more about the cars, like things like rockabilly dancing or vintage clothes shopping and fashion shows. You don't have to love cars to really enjoy this event. For somebody who loves shooting people, it's honestly an absolute dream. I mean, looking at this image, some of the light you get and the atmosphere that this event creates is just beautiful. So I shot images of the Goodwood Revival, and I sent those images to Goodwood via a Facebook message of all things. And I later found out that it was by pure fluke that they were even spotted. A number of months later, they hired me for a new event of theirs called the Members Meeting. And hey presto, I've been one of their event photographers ever since. This is another one of my favorite images. Looking at each of these events, a big common factor in each of their successes is social media. If you want to be a professional photographer and you don't already have a website and a couple of social media outlets, they are really, really handy to have. I'm not saying they're essential, they just help a lot. Social media has and does continue to be such an important tool for me in terms of building my brand and continuing to find work. Instagram is the easiest way to show an overview of your portfolio. I now use my website to show my work in more depth, so things like full albums of events rather than just a few select images. When potential clients look at your work, deciding if they want to hire you, they don't want to just see 20 of the best images you've ever taken. They want to see what they are going to get. A full car shoot for a magazine article might include things like dynamic shots as well as detail and beauty shots and engine shots, things like that. An event wants to see images that aren't just cars on the track. You don't have to show hundreds, but just make sure that your website does give a good overview of the work that you can do. So we'll talk a little bit about social media now. It's something I've not really gone into depth before. I'm going to go over a few of the pros and cons because it can be wonderful, but also biggest pain in the neck. So firstly, big pro, obviously free exposure with potentially a huge range. It is the easiest way to get your work out there in the world, and use that wisely. Number two, you get immediate feedback on your images. You can gauge what works well and what creates interest, but use this as a rough guide because it's not the be all and end all. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this image going off from that. You can use social media to improve your work if that's what you want to do. You can try putting your work onto a photo critiquing website to get honest feedback at your work. Because sometimes, I know in my own experience, friends and family can sometimes be a little bit overly nice, and you just want to kind of be told, okay, no, but where can I improve? But don't forget, you do not have to listen to the feedback that you receive, and that is totally down to you. For example, I asked my biggest fan, who's also good at being my biggest critic, to tell me what she thought of this image that I was going to start printing as a limited edition print. This fan is my mum. So I showed her this image, and my mum's comments on it were, I haven't a clue what that car is. Is it meant to be a special car or something? Side note, it is. And she goes on to say, I definitely don't like that. It's all blurry. Why do you do that? Nope, don't like that shot at all. Honestly, that's what she said. But for me, this image shows the essence of, seconds before a race, just as the cars are leaving the assembly area. Spectators and mechanics are gathered around in anticipation, watching these magnificent vehicles roar past them. The dappled high summer sun intensifies the smell of classic exhaust fumes, and all the driver is doing is focusing on what's about to happen. Despite my mum's comments, I decided to put the print up for sale anyway, and it's been one of my best selling images ever since. Going back to my pros and cons. You can get your images in front of a tailored audience is another great pro of social media. That audience are your client base. Going into a couple of cons. You have to tailor your content to get that tailored audience. If you want to gain followers and social media interest, and then possibly even jobs from your social media, it does help to keep your feed relevant. If you post pictures of motorbikes, but then throw in a nice photo of a dog that you shot, there's a chance that you may lose some followers fairly easily. This isn't because the photo of the dog that you took isn't a good photograph. It might be brilliant, but it's because people have now the ability to pick and choose a lot more. They can also be a little bit shallow. It's awesome if you have a wide range of skills to showcase, or if you're not sure about what you want to shoot yet. But I have learned that if you want to grow your social media following, keeping genres separate on social media platforms is beneficial. Time. Yes, it takes time to try and post something every 2 or 3 days, and I'm definitely not the best at it, but it is time well spent if you can do it fairly regularly. The third con is it can be dangerous if not taken lightly. Do not base your own creative worth on how many likes a picture gets, or if someone leaves a negative comment. Not everyone will like your work, and that isn't a bad thing. If anything, it's positive. People pleasers never made history with their talents. So this leads me on to the next big question we all have to face at some point. What the hell do I take photographs of? Photography is a two-sided passion. Taking pictures is one side, and the other should be another passion of yours. I love taking pictures and wanted to be able to travel the world with my job. That was all I really ever wanted to do as a dream job. But I always thought that that meant you had to shoot for the National Geographic or something like that. I never knew when I started out that cars would give me the exact same experiences, or at least the ones that I would thoroughly enjoy worldwide. My love for cars and motorcycles grew, and the more I photographed them, and now I truly love the automotive world to my core. But what about you? What excites you? Do you love exercise or animals, or are you passionate about cars or food, cakes? To be like a cake photographer, I think would be one of the best jobs in the world. But whatever it is, make sure that what you photograph is something you are passionate about. follow people that already photograph these things professionally and see what kind of people that do they work for themselves. Do they shoot for magazine articles or a media platform like Getty Images? Or do they simply sell fine art images in galleries? For me, my work goes to event organisers who use my photographs on social media and newsletters, magazine articles, company websites and adverts, and sometimes private clients who just want photographs of their cars. Don't worry, and this is a big thing, don't worry if you don't know everything about your subject or photography. When I first started out, I was definitely not an expert in photography, and I definitely knew nothing about cars, and I still only know enough now. Somebody genuinely asked me the other day if I considered myself to be a petrol head. And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm not too fussed about what's underneath the bonnet. I much prefer a car's design and, you know, the feeling of driving and adventuring and road tripping. And the guy told me that I'm obviously not a petrol head in that case. So I felt like asking if I needed to know how many rivets an Alfa Romeo P3 had to be able to be considered a petrol head. But the same goes with photography. When I tell people that I'm a professional photographer, I sometimes get the response like, oh, cool, I really like photography too. How many megapixels does your camera have? And honestly, I'll say like, I think my D5 has 20 something. To which I might and have actually been scoffed at with a reply of, you don't know. You know, what about your studio equipment? You've got loads of expensive lights. And I, again, reply with no, I don't really know how to use them. And I don't really need to or want to. That's just not how I work. At the end of the day, if you're producing work which you like for your own reasons, then that's a success. Work to your strengths and your interests. Your talents will excel in your passions and those interests. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you're doing your own art incorrectly. Yes, you can definitely try and improve if that's what you want to do, but that's all in the learning curve. There was a point that I didn't realize that for my own work at least, it was better to shoot raw images over JPEGs, but I learned and adapted. I didn't realize that when I first started shooting cars, a polarizing filter would help with reflections. But then somebody said early in a shoot to me, oh, you know, maybe you should think about getting one. And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, I totally agree. Another one, a client wanted me to shoot with lighting and wanted lighting involved. And I explained to them, I said, yeah, it's not really how I work, but I'm happy to adapt. And they ended up hiring a lighting technician to join me on the shoot, which made us both happy. Just because you don't know everything, all the ins and outs of every single camera model under the sun, or about every single setting that your own camera has to offer, or if someone's asking you something technical that you don't know, that is not a bad thing or a reflection of your work. You can find out all of the answers to those technical questions to do with photography with a very quick Google search. If the technical aspect of your work is getting you down, then yes, research into getting around those hurdles, but it really isn't the be-all and end-all of your work. So they say that comparison is the thief of joy, and looking at our own work honestly, it can be difficult to look at it and also feel inspired. So I thought I'd show you some of my own inspirations. Wes Anderson, big one for me. I absolutely love the composition of his work and his graphic layouts and those beautiful, beautiful pastel colors. I saw Laurent Naval's work even before I was a car photographer or really into cars, but he was the first person that showed me that cars could be interesting and not just some CGI'd advert on a billboard. I've loved Harry Benson since my parents got me a book of his when I was 13 years old. He made me interested in people and photojournalism, capturing moments of celebrities and political events. John McCullen, very famously, you know, his work inspired me to shoot with just natural light, just like he does and did in conflict war zones, and always to be on the lookout for these unrepeatable natural moments of interesting characters. There is a difference between imitation and inspiration. Find your inspirations and create something new and wonderful out of them. The way you shoot or what you shoot on, your edits, if you decide to edit at all, they are all bases to make your own mark. It took me from picking a camera up at the age of 16 to a couple of years into my professional full-time career to feel comfortable in my own style, or comfortable at the moment for the time being. Finding your own style will come from shooting thousands of images, being inspired by others, and a hell of a lot of trial and error. Your work should be uniquely yours. There are only a handful of musical notes in the world, and yet music will never be oversaturated. So why would you expect photography to be either? If you're currently a photoshopping whiz at photographing cars, but you'd love to photograph animals, then think what would happen if you applied that car knowledge to animal photography? Or if you love to shoot studio fashion portraits, but wanted to raise awareness about homelessness, you know, what would the outcome be? So you've got your style and you've got your subject. You've set your website up and your Instagram and your Facebook pages are ticking over nicely. Now the big question, how the hell do you find clients? The first time I attempted to find a client for my car photography, I approached the only car magazine that I knew and half liked from looking at Sainsbury shelves, and that was Octane magazine. In the front of most magazines, there are email addresses for people in the magazine. I emailed the art director of that magazine with a very quick hello and a link to the photographs of cars I'd shot up to that point. The art director was very kind and he asked if I wanted to come in and show them a bit more of my work, which I did. He did tell me that he liked my work, but I didn't have enough of a strong portfolio to have them hire me and to go away and show that I could shoot more dynamic moving shots with more engine details. So I went away and I shot a few more things for them, or what I thought they might like. So mainly dynamic shots. I'd never shot a moving car at that point. Some of the shots that I sent over, I took my dad and my mom out to help me with this. So my dad has a classic Mini and he was my driver with my subject. And then my mom was my tracking driver. So when you do car-to-car tracking, you have the car you're shooting and you have a driver that you hang out the boot of that car and try and shoot the car behind you with a slow shutter. My mom at the time was like, is this safe? I don't know if this is safe. But no, she did a great job. So anyway, I took some more shots and then I sent my updated portfolio to him and was once again turned down because the simple truth was my work wasn't good enough for what they needed. And it wasn't, it wasn't quite a nationwide publication just yet. My work hadn't just matured quite enough. Looking back, I can totally see what he means. And I still like the photographs that I shot, but they're not quite magazine quality. To accept that initially was genuinely a bit of a blow. I thought that I was doing quite well after, all the images and the going viral at that point and the weddings. But it also resulted in me pushing myself further to try and better my portfolio to be able to work for these magazines. So as I would have mentioned, there are literally thousands of articles online to be able to help you with your photography, from shooting on a pinhole camera to high precision editing, nailing those macro shots to composing a stunning mountainscape shot. You will get better the more you practice, just like anything else. But rejection can suck. I mean, I'm not sure about you guys watching, but I'm not very thick-skinned and definitely take some things a little bit too personally when it comes to my work. But rejection really is something that will happen and it is totally okay. You're still doing just fine. People will reject you for all sorts of reasons, but use those reasons for your advantage. One example I got rejection for was a wedding a couple inquired about. They told me that I was out of their budget, which made me question a couple of things. Was my work not worth my price, or was my price just wrong? At the time, I was charging just under £700 for a full day of wedding shooting from beginning to end, which I now know is quite way below average. But even at the time, I felt that my work was good enough and I decided that my pricing was fair, so I stuck with it. And despite my fears that nobody would hire me at that price, of course, many did, and I did continue to slowly raise my price. It is up to you to use this rejection to your best advantage. If you find yourself constantly getting in touch with potential clients without any follow-up, it might be worth reflecting on your own work and asking yourself why. Are there current photographers that they're using, are they producing stronger work than you? Are you getting in touch with the wrong kind of client? Work won't suit everyone, and I know mine doesn't. There are plenty of car photography jobs that I'll never get hired for simply because my work doesn't suit their aesthetic, or my skill set is simply different to what they're after. Know your strengths and work with them. there's a good chance that if your work doesn't suit a magazine or a brand, you probably wouldn't want to work with them anyway. So take Jaguar Land Rover, for example. Basically they're the same client, but two very different brands. I've done a load of work for Land Rover, but exceptionally little for Jaguar. This is because my work suits the Land Rover brand far better than it does the Jaguar brand. Shooting adventures with Land Rover is far more up my street than shooting Jaguars on a racetrack, and the results work best for both of us. Emailing a potential client is probably the easiest way to go. You can drop them a message on Instagram or something like that, which can work too, and it's easy for them to click on that on your feed and to be able to look through your portfolio of images, basically. Make no mistake, they will receive a lot of emails and messages like this, but also know that they know what a great image is as well. Magazines will more likely jump on your images if there's a great story attached too. So nice images are one thing, but publications really do like it when you've got a story that's involved as well, because they need both to be able to publish it. Keep your tone casual, but make sure that they know that you love the brand and that you'd love to collaborate with them. Small businesses are great because there is more chance of your message being seen and by the right people and being able to work for them too. Small jobs for small companies are a great way to test out what you love to shoot and how to work with clients or work into briefs that you may not be used to, and really building on a portfolio for the bigger clients and jobs. As I've mentioned, I was very lucky in going from an amateur to professional. I didn't have any financial responsibilities other than paying my mum about 20 quid a week to keep my mini going. But I know that this isn't the case for many people wanting to break into the world of photography full time. When somebody emails me telling me that they've decided to quit their full-time job to become a full-time photographer instead, I do think, bloody hell, you've got guts, because I personally wouldn't be able to do that. I can't even begin to imagine the pressure to try and succeed in this new and difficult profession. If I was going into professional photography now, I would first make sure that I had at least a couple of clients on my books, because each of my clients, even now, only hire me once or twice a year. If you can get evening and weekend work just doing photography stuff, then that's great too. Just keep that until you physically feel that you cannot do any more. At least that's what I did. Ask your employer if you could cut down a little bit to part-time work, or even maybe find an alternative job that will allow you to work part-time. Tip the scales slowly. I shot cars and weddings equally for about 3 years before I decided to stop taking on weddings, which is a scary thought as it was, because weddings are something you can book in advance and you can see exactly when you're going to get paid. It was something I felt I really had to do. They were my safety net, but they also did get in the way of some car jobs. You don't have to be so hard on yourself when starting out. Just try your best with what options you can. So a few tips for things that I've learned along the way. Some of these things you might find useful, some less so, as they're a little bit car related, but I hope you can still take something away from them. A lot of the things that people ask me about is to do with photographing people at events. Photographing people can be really difficult. This is something that I learned primarily from shooting weddings, but really have carried it on when shooting the car world. When I'm shooting people at an event, it's usually because they look interesting, or they're doing something interesting, or the light is amazing around them, etc. My approach is to take a photograph of them and then smile at them. Show them that you're not threatening. If you're within talking range, then tell them why you took their photograph. Compliment them. I love your dress, or the light that's falling on you is beautiful. By complimenting people, you're showing that sense of vulnerability, and you look awesome. People like to be complimented. It's a very rare occasion that somebody asks me who I'm shooting for, or asks me not to photograph them. If you're at a public event, there are people all over the place with cameras. More often than not, they'll be delighted that you found them interesting and wanted to take their photograph. I find photographing people in a more private space a lot more difficult. So I try to talk to them and make them laugh, calm them down. I have a load of saved photos of other people's portraiture poses that I go to just to check over, so I can be inspired for my own portraiture shoots. I recently had a shoot with Formula One driver Daniel Ricciardo, and wanted to try something different to the usual, like arms crossed driver pose that many Formula One images are. So I got him to sit in a chair, which was in this room, and a place, that I put in a place that I knew I'd like it. And I wanted him to lean back on it as far as he dared. I love the images that I got from that shoot. It's always helpful if you can give your subjects something to do, or if they have to repeat something. So sometimes I'll say to someone, okay, just get in and out of the car 5 times. And each time they'll relax a little bit more, they'll try something else out as they get a little bit more confidence. By giving them something to do takes their mind off the fact that they're being photographed if it's not something that they're used to having done. When shooting anything from people to cars, give your subject room to breathe. You can always crop an image if you need to. I see so many car photographers who shoot on track but crop images way too tight around the car. You need to give your subject some space. Think about your composition too. Does the subject need to be so big in the frame? Or how about off center or tiny in the corner, blurred from motion? Can you put something in the foreground to lead your eyes into the image or to frame your subject better? Another tip, move your body. A lot of my shots are results of me watching a moment unfold and trying to guess what's going to happen and being prepared for that. Trying to guess what's going to happen next, which means often legging it from one end of the pit lane to the other to get that moment where the drivers are manically trying to change in the driver race possible, as quick as possible. Don't just stand in one place with a long lens and pick off targets like a sniper. This is all of my kit. I don't carry all of this around with me on all of my jobs. I leave the big 70 to 200 lens at home quite often because I only really use it on road trips and when I'm shooting on a track that I can't get close to. I love shooting on a 35mm lens because I'm forced to get into the action and really live that moment, and living it comes across in my shots. Robert Capa once famously said, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. With that being said, I don't advise you to shoot cars and lens too wide if you're wanting to get into car photography, as you'll distort the car to an extent where you'll lose the shape and the design of the car, which brands and car designers alike aren't massive fans of. A mistake I often see in car photography is shooting too wide and too close. And if you want your photographs to feel like you were actually there, you do need to actually be there. A longer lens will make the photograph feel like you're more of an onlooker of that moment rather than living that moment. I usually use a longer lens when I'm doing things like advertising shoots because you want to be able to show that moment kind of from a bit of a stood back stand back situation. It all depends on what I want to be portraying or what the client wants to portray. So a final tip is to be yourself. You don't have to try and be Don McCullen or Annie Leibovitz, David Bailey, Robert Capa, Sebastião Salgado, Peter Lindbergh or Ansel Adams, anybody else but you. Those people are all taken. And if you try to copy somebody else, you will always be a step behind them. If you yourself and your own work, then you'll achieve just as great or if not better things. The main thing I wanted this talk to achieve is tell you that you are all doing just fine. There will always be ups and downs where you love photography or you don't like it quite as much, and that's totally okay. But whatever you're shooting and whoever you're shooting it for, as long as you enjoy what you're doing, then that is the true success. Thanks. You're awesome.
I think that's a really good point to end on.
Sorry, if it felt a little bit kind of scripted, but I wanted every word that I said, I really hope kind of resonated with your watching.
Yeah, I think it really did. And I've got some questions as well.
Yep.
So Harriet Hoskins asked, what dictates whether you edit an image in colour or black and white?
So this is, there's a mixture of this. Sometimes an image will just look brilliant in black and white. And sometimes I will give a client the same image twice, once in colour, once in black and white, because I just can't decide myself which one I prefer, and I will leave it up to them. Sometimes it is purely the easiest option, which I will be totally honest about. If you're shooting a wedding, so when I used to shoot weddings, shooting in a church, for example, would often have pretty terrible light, and with kind of orange interior lights, and skin tones would look totally the wrong color. And I think, you know, this will just be a much nicer image if it was just black and white. And you kind of try and embed some color ones in between as well. But you kind of, I try to hope that my clients or my bride and grooms will know that I've chosen what I feel is the best result for that moment. So that might just be black and white. So yeah, sometimes it will depend on the image, will just work well in black and white, and sometimes it is the easiest, which I will, yeah, happily say.
And so you mentioned that you know, once you discovered raw files and the scope that they gave you, do you ever shoot in black and white, or do you always just sort of shoot with color in mind and then convert to black and white?
Exactly that. Yeah. So always shoot raw color, and because then you've got option of both ways. And also when, like for me, if I was just to shoot in black and white, the automatic black and white is not what I'm going to end up with. It's going to be something completely different in my own black and white edit. So I don't feel it's a true representation of what I would get. And yeah, I just would much prefer to be able to say, no, I've got that in color and in black and white. I'll work from that.
Yeah, great. Okay, and we've got some questions here. So someone, actually sticking with the wedding theme, someone asked about how did you go about getting those offers to photograph weddings the first time when you started doing that?
The first time would have been, I put most weddings on my website, and I did them kind of almost not full weddings, but say I gave a bride and groom 600 shots, I'd maybe put about 50 to 100 of them even on my website, so people could really skim through what they were going to get. Because I mean, looking for wedding photographers for myself now, I want to should be able to make sure that I'm going to have all my family and friends photographed as well. And it would worry me if I only saw pictures just of bride and grooms in this beautiful shot, in this beautiful pose. So I'd started off by putting things on my website, and then it mainly was going through bride and grooms and their guests. So it was often, oh, you shot my friend, or I saw your work on Instagram or your website. And but primarily it's starting off doing those, your friends' weddings, basically, because yeah, it was doing cheap friends' weddings. And I will be honest, when I first started, I was not very good, but they didn't mind. They were happy with the photographs that they received. But that's how you kind of start the ball rolling. Yeah, I didn't go straight into charging £700 for a wedding. And, you know, it kind of built and built as my confidence grew, and as I felt I could in my business, yeah, grow my own wedding photography brand.
Great. And Anne Maxwell was asking about sort of following up on your Octane magazine story. Did you eventually work for them?
Yes, so about 3 years later. And it was funny because my first official job, well, their email to me was, hi Amy, so it looks like you've been a bit busy since we last spoke. And at that point, I'd already been working for, I think, people like Jaguar Land Rover, or, you know, people around the world. And their first shoot for me to do was their cover shot. So they went into kind of me giving me advice to 3 years later asking me to shoot their cover shot, which it was my first cover shot as well, so I was absolutely blown away and over the moon. And yeah, it was of a DeLorean as well, so the Back to the Future car. So I thought that was a really cool first car cover.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story.
And yeah, it was awesome. But I mean, again, like I've done quite a bit of work for them since, but like I said in one of my other points, I probably only work for them once a year, if that, because they like to, you know, people like to be able to open a magazine and see a mixture. And a lot of magazines will also have their own in-house photographer that does a lot of their shoots. And so to have a photographer come in and do some of the shoots is a real great shoot to do, but it might not always happen. So yeah, again, don't be worried if you get rejected or anything like that, because sometimes it's just the way that their dynamic and, you know, their work is. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, that must have been a really nice bit of closure for you, because, you know, like you say, nobody likes rejection or being told their stuff isn't quite right or not good enough. So to sort of come back 3 years later and do the cover shoot, and it to be your first cover shoot, must have been really nice.
Yeah, that was really good. That was one of those, Mom, look in Sainsbury's, magazines moments. So really yeah, nice. No, that was a really special one.
So that also answers really Anne's follow-up question, was, does getting rejected from someone because you're not good enough at one point affect your chances of being hired later? And the answer is no. Not necessarily.
No, not at all. I think because I mean, you can see if somebody's got that passion and kind of that skill set, or what can be built upon. So I think they always kind of kept an eye on me because they could see my love for cars and motorcycles and this automotive world. And I didn't badger is the wrong word, because I didn't badger them, but I did make sure that they knew I was still around. So like I would follow their Instagram and, you know, just do a few likes and comments or whatever, just to make sure that they were aware of me. But I didn't kind of email them every week being like, hire me, or anything like that. It was, I wanted it to kind of be, look, I am here if you want to hire me whenever you're ready, which was 3 years later. So yeah, it's that's kind of the way I try to work around clients.
I think that's a really good point, actually, just to kind of be on their radar without badgering them, because they don't want to be, oh God, it's Amy again trying to get us to publish our pictures. But
yeah,
just
because
they keep an eye on you.
Exactly, because they will have a lot of photographers that do want to obviously be in their magazines, and especially if they're great magazines. And it's if you don't get a reply, don't take that as rejection either, or just think, oh, I'm never going to contact them again. It's just, honestly, sometimes they are so busy that they'll look and they'll might think, I'm going to remember you, or whatever. It's not, don't take it personally. And I can totally say, vouch for that as well.
Yeah. And it can be a timing thing. It could be that you know, like you say, you get a collection of fabulous images together and you give them an idea and they think, oh, damn, we've just commissioned something exactly like that, but we love these pictures, but they can't do anything like that for at least 6 months again. So, you know, it might be they come back to you.
Exactly that. It's most of the time that for example Octane hire me now is they'll say, oh, we've got a great shoot that we thought of you for. So it's just because I suppose in the automotive world, for me, it's the people side of things. Often it's the people based shoots that they hire me for. They don't hire me for general car shoots, because there are people that they've got in their books that go and do that for them. So it is the more people side or the road trip sides that they end up contacting me for. A lot of workshops, which are really cool.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, so we've got another question. It's quite a long one, so it might take me a little while to ramble through it.
Okay.
Do you have any tips specifically for a young person who wants to get into photography as a career? This is an anonymous attendee. Is currently studying photography at college and wants to do it as a job when she leaves. However, a lot of places require you to have some experience, which is hard to get when you're young. Any advice would be helpful. Also, she's really enjoying the webinar.
Woohoo. Okay, so any advice in terms of education and stuff like that?
Well, I think she's already studying photography at college. Okay. So she wants to know how she can get experience, which will help her get a job.
Okay, then. Yeah. So I always thought that you have to go and kind of help out another photographer, which definitely helps. But I know now from the other side of things, from my experience as a professional, that can sometimes be a bit difficult to try and arrange and sort out. And because sometimes you're there to try and shoot for a client. You've got to make sure that you can spend the time shooting for your client. And you also want to spend the time talking to somebody that you want to teach. And so that can be a little bit difficult. So I suppose my main bit of advice is literally to get out there and try and do as many of these shoots as you can for, you know, friends, family, charities. Or one of my very first clients as such was your local magazine you get through your door for free. That's like your 5 Village magazine or whatever. That was my first client. So they were just they were non-profits, and I just wanted to be able to show that I could do photojournalism. And they hadn't got, obviously, very many people photographing events and, you know, things like carnivals or whatever was going on at the time. So I tried to get involved in shooting anything that I could to show that I could work for a client and that I could work for a brief, really. So I think that'd probably be the biggest and best bit of advice. Try and get yourself in that environment, working for clients as early as you can. If, I suppose, to go back to, if that's what you want to do, if you want to work for clients, or if you want to start selling prints, look into people who are loads and loads of people who are selling prints and look into how they're doing that. Basically research is your key to opening up the world of photography in front of you, just to see how other people are doing it and how you can do it, or how you can do it better as well. If you can figure that out, then you're rolling in it.
I think that's really good advice. And, you know, like you said, you know, you started with the Parish magazine. You might want to go on to work for Vogue, who knows, but don't pitch.
Exactly.
You've got to work up to it to get the experience and the standard, and also kind of learn the ropes a little bit as well. That will really put you in good stead. And the same with, you know, if you want to sell prints, then maybe you could start selling some in a local shop. And so you never know who might wander in and build up from there.
Because it is things like that sorry, I was just saying, these things like that, like selling in a local shop, there's so many, like, you'll think, okay, well, what paper do I print on? Where do I find a printer? What about framing? Do I do that? There's so many little things in each one of these things you'll try and do that you will learn a lot and very quickly. So yeah, start small and then get bigger and bigger, and then yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually about the paper and frames and things like that, because it's very easy to sort of think about it academically, but to actually go through the motions and find what you really like and the frame that suits your prints and the size that you want, to actually go through that process is really, really important.
Even like to post and packaging, things like that. Honestly, there's a whole world behind prints. That could be a whole other webinar.
Okay. And then someone else, Beth, has asked, how do you start out on Instagram and make sure it looks professional?
Oh, okay. So when I first started, I didn't really know much about Instagram. It was something that people were on and they were like, yeah, I think you'd quite like to be on that, just because I like sharing pictures. And I made some, what I now consider of mistakes when I started. So I think my first 3 posts are like a wedding one, picture of my cat, and a picture of my dad's watercolor like paints or something like that. They were just completely random pictures that I just liked. So if I was going into it now, especially like if I wanted to create a new Instagram account, for example, I'd make sure that I had primarily high quality images, really, yeah, you know, beautiful, some of your favorite images. A little thing is, if you can post portrait images, they physically show up on that of somebody's screen bigger than if you were to post landscape images. This can sometimes be a bit of a pain because I shoot mainly landscapes, so it's sometimes trying to find the balance of, okay, that landscape shot will actually work quite nice or whatever, but in actually, you know, showing your work off on a platform like Instagram, portrait pictures will work the best. And then just make sure that you're kind of, I know, in my own Instagram, I try to keep things quite conversational, quite light. I don't dive too much into technical details, just that's because that's the way I want to portray myself. And especially if a client's going to look at my feed, I want to be like, this is me. And like a thing that I do at the end of every post is I write a song that I'm listening to at that moment, because I want to portray that I'm really into music as well. Use it as a kind of a base for your portfolio and your work, but keep it personal as well, because yeah, that's what people would like to see. And so yeah, again, with the kind of keeping your subject consistent does help, but it depends again on what you want to get out of your Instagram. If you want to keep it business, that's where I'd keep things kind of the same. I've debated like creating a just purely personal one, just to post pictures of my friends and family, and just for fun. But I haven't got time for that, and I'd love to, but I struggle with my own at the minute. So, but yeah, that's kind of, I think, a couple of the tips that I do. You can go into a lot of hashtagging and stuff. I'm sometimes simply just not creative enough to try and think of what hashtag works. So I'm like, hashtag Ferrari. So, which I don't think is necessarily, you don't overthink it. I think that's the main thing. Just kind of keep it casual and enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you'll end up feeling like it's a chore. And Instagram quite fun and, you know, inspirational. So keep it not a chore.
So if you were still shooting weddings on a frequent basis, would you have a separate Instagram account for weddings and for motorcars?
Yes, exactly that. I mean, if the pandemic continues for 5 years or something, then weddings might be something I go into if it stops me from traveling. But yes, if that ever became the case, I would start a completely new Instagram to be able to show that side of my work. Exactly that. Yeah.
Do you use Instagram stories very much?
Yes, so I use Instagram stories probably daily because it's a really light-hearted way to show off a bit of your life and something you kind of want to share, but it's not, I mean, I use my feed, my actual feed, as my portfolio, almost more than my website now, because I know from my own experiences as a user, I am lazy. So if I want to see, for example, a clothing website, or a clothing brand, I won't go to their website and look at, a mixture of everything. I'll go to their Instagram and have a flick through. So I try to assume that is how other people will also look at my own feed. So I'll try and make sure the things that I post are the beautiful images I'm proud of. And then my stories are the ones that are talking about what's going on in my day-to-day, or if I want to share something, that I'm really inspired by, or something like that. It's a lot more casual and laid back.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry if my audio has taken a nosedive, but my neighbour's just started mowing the lawn. All about the
Don't
technical things today. So thanks for that advice on Instagram. Linda has asked, when shooting strangers at events like Goodwood Revival, what do you do about model releases which are necessary for commercial use?
Primarily, I don't ever sell my images commercially. If I need to get model releases, and I will have to try and find those people, and or if I knew that when I was shooting them these images were going to be sold commercially, then I would go and see if I could hunt these people down to get them. But most of the time I don't ever sell those images, or when I say most of the time, I don't sell those images commercially because I would need a model release form. It's primarily editorial and kind of private usage, or Instagram, social media. I think if you want to start looking into there's what's called above the line and below the line usage, and that you can go into a very long rabbit hole of looking into that. But things that are above the line tend to be the things you need model release forms, and they are the bigger advertising things. Things that are below the line are the things that you can your usage is a lot more like social media and things like that. So research into that and you'll kind of get an idea. But if it's just covering an event and it's not going to be used directly for commercial use, then you're fine.
Where would you put selling limited edition prints in that?
I tend to think that I'm not selling, even though I'm producing images of my own work, I'm not trying to sell a brand, if that makes sense. I'm not being like, buy this product. And as far as I've learned from my own experiences and research, I can't see it being an issue. If somebody ever said to me, I don't like that you're selling a picture that I am in, like most of the time, I don't really sell pictures because, I don't sell pictures of people's faces or that faces are in, because people don't always want other faces on their wall. The pictures that I put up for sale are generally car photographs because people like pictures of cars. And it's the people who have been in my photographs have often been the people that have been like, can I buy that? Or, I'm so proud that you're happy that I'm in that. So, I think it's down to what you feel. I think another thing, if it was anything like kids, I would, hell no, just no. And then another one was I used a photograph of quite an elderly lady that was sat on the door, basically, of a car. And I didn't know who she was. I thought she was brilliant, but I wanted to Photoshop a Santa hat onto her and send it out as my Christmas card to people. So I thought, okay, I feel uncomfortable if doing that, if she doesn't kind of give me the thumbs up for that. So I managed to put her photograph onto Instagram and say, does anybody know this woman? I would like this and would like to ask her permission first. And then, somebody said, I know who she is. And so I sent this lady an email saying, would you mind if I did this? And she said, that's hilarious. I love it. Absolutely. Can you please send me a pack myself that I can send out this Christmas? So that's what I did. Yeah. So I think if in doubt, don't. Just if you can, ask permission. But from my own experience, it's all kind of been, as long as you're not daft, then it's all okay.
Okay. And was there a picture, the one that you with the Santa hat, was it the photograph that you showed in your slideshow with the lady?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a lovely
shot.
Yes,
that was the one. I couldn't remember if that was part of the glitch, but yes, that was it.
I can see that working very well as a Christmas card.
Bless her. She looks. So I can now talk. She looks quite miserable in it, and I was like, oh, you look a bit scary. And then I now know from meeting her, and I said this to her, and she's such a lovely lady, and she's very jolly, and so that's almost what makes it funnier, because people that do know her, know that's not her. So it works well.
That's lovely. We've got a few more questions, if that's okay. Diane has asked, how did you go about choosing the website that you use? And I think by that she means like the platform that you use.
Yep. Okay. So I started my website quite a lot of years ago when I still don't know anything about making websites. If I was to do my website now, I would use something that was easy, such as Squarespace, I think, which is what what we looked into when I was doing my print shop and stuff. I currently use WordPress because it's more of a blog than a website. So it allows me to do a bit of writing about shoot, load of images, and that's that. It's not the best, I would admit, for kind of showing off my work. It'll crop funny. I wouldn't use it now if I could change it, but I'm way too deep in now. I've got so much work on there that I just think, no, you know what? It's fine. I will leave it. So I think my advice would be to, you know, look around, think about what you know about making websites yourself. It's something you'll have to update quite regularly with your new work. And yeah, just look at platforms that you think you can work with and that you like the design of. So if you want to have your opening homepage to be a full picture or a full screen of your image, then look for website designs that allow you to do that. Make sure your image quality you put online is high res. And yeah, just I mean, I used to just look at other people's websites. I thought, oh, I like that. I like the way they've done that. I like the way that these people have done that, and kind of merge it together in my own. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, how I'd go about it.
Okay, thank you for that. It's interesting that you used Squarespace at one point, because that's what we use for the SheClicks website. And I obviously work on WordPress for other websites as well, like Camera Jabber, and they are quite different. But I think Squarespace is easier to use in many respects. But WordPress is it's more flexible. It's got more potential, and yeah, there's lots of scope. But Diane, actually, we do have a webinar about website design, and the example there is specifically Squarespace, but it can be applied to other things. So I'll send you a link to that. Okay, so Fiona has asked if you run any specialized courses to help people improve their skills.
Not yet.
Actually, sorry. What she said is, do you do any specialized courses to improve your skills? Now, I've interpreted that as you running them, but it could be the other way around. It could be, do you go around? Yeah.
Okay, both way round, not yet. So if I was to learn my skills, some skills, I suppose the skills that I really genuinely want to learn and would look into doing would be business skills, because it's something you become a photographer, you're suddenly a businesswoman, accountant, everything, and you just think, I know nothing about any of that. So that would be the thing that I would, if I was to learn anything now, go into. In terms of kind of the photography skills, I like my work and where I'm at, and I don't think, especially at the moment, there's nothing that I think to myself, I really want to learn to do that. If I had the opportunity or something came up, like I love astronomy photography, except I know nothing about it. So I think if I saw a course, I probably would go on that to give that a go and learn a bit more. But otherwise, I would just research things on Google. Otherwise, flipping around, do I teach them? Not yet, but I plan to. It's something that this pandemic has got me thinking about and thinking, okay, how can I make this work? So I've got a couple of guinea pig shoots coming up with somebody that wants to learn something. And I think that the hardest thing from my point is what to try and how to categorize courses, for example. So do people not know how to use a camera, or very well? Do I need to teach them the very basics about f-stop and ISO and shutter speed, or do they want to know a little bit more about some more in-depth details of photography and movements and something like that? So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that, and but no, it's something I would really like to do.
Oh, that's very exciting. I think it is one of the upsides of the pandemic, is a lot of people have had a chance to think about things and what they want to do. And in some cases that's enforced because you can't do what you used to do, and you're kind of thinking, well, now what do I want to do? So that's exciting. Okay, I look forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, hopefully it goes well. If you don't hear anything, it didn't go well.
I'm sure it will. Right. So on social media, someone has asked, how do they make sure their work reaches their audience, and how does she engage with the audience?
Oh, so I guess that would depend on who your audience would be. I would make sure that anything that I put onto social media, for example, I was always trying to reply to comments or questions or things that people were asking or saying. I think that's one of the main things. And then, I mean, as I said, for me, it was kind of easy enough to go through the idea of events and organizations and brands, but like if you wanted to go into landscape photography, I don't think I know how to start that, because the thing about cars, which is really helpful, is that cars have money, which if you're thinking about being professional, helps. As far as I'm aware from this side of things, the landscapes can't pay you to take their picture, which sounds horrible, but I mean I don't know how I'd go into it. I think I have maybe magazines or prints, But the cars are fairly easy because, you know, like bride and grooms want their photograph being taken, and people who've got cars, whether it's brands or their own, you know, stories or owners, they will happily say, oh, I will pay you to take pictures of me in my car, for example. I think trying to find that's why I kind of suggested, you know, look at other people, other professionals who are doing the job that you want to do. Who do they work for is a good way to start, just to literally see, okay, if I want to do this professionally, who are the types of people I should be looking to work for? Is it, you know, simply putting my images for sale for usage rights, and then trying to contact, I don't know, nature people and say, you know, would you like to use my images on your website, in your, you know, advertising? Yeah, sorry, it's not a very good answer. I'm not entirely sure.
But I think it was like you were saying about how you kept in touch with the magazine, Octane. You know, you just tagged them every now and again, or commented on their pictures, and just to let them know, so they might, who's that? Oh yes, it's that one who takes those photos. And like you say, you know, if you keep tabs on the people whose work you admire, see who they follow, see who follows them, you know, look to follow and keep tagging, not say tagging people, but using the same hashtags and that kind of thing. Just keep in touch that way. I think it's easier probably with Twitter and Instagram these days. Facebook, if you have a following, it's even if you've got a following, it's quite hard to stay in touch with them because of the Facebook algorithms, and sometimes you have to throw money at it. But I tend to try and resist that, because I think Facebook, oh, you've paid some money, you'll do it again. And so I think it's better just to have a variety of different techniques, and you know, comment on what other people say. Just, you know, be engaged, basically.
Again, I think the only way you can do it also is if you are passionate about it and you really genuinely love it. So don't necessarily think about it purely from a business side of view, but also do it like genuinely from a love point of view.
Yeah, that's good advice. Right, last 3 questions. Oh, by the way, Rebecca Hedges says, if you need any guinea pigs for your courses or training, she's sure that there's some SheClickers that be able to help out. So there you go.
You know what? That is a good shout. I hadn't really thought of, because it's, I'll have to probably get in touch with you afterwards about that.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, we have a SheClicks day out with cars and cameras and people.
Yes.
Okay, that'd be lovely. Right, so Anne has asked, do you have to get a license with a photographic body to get access to the car events as an official photographer? If so, how? And do you have to present a portfolio? That's a good question.
That's a good question. It's one I also get asked quite a lot as well. So no, you don't have to be with a photographic body to do it, but it, as far as I've kind of experienced so far, you do have to be working for someone. So it doesn't always matter who that someone is. So I think the very, very first time I tried to apply for accreditation at Goodwood, I was working for a friend of mine who paints aeroplane pictures, basically, and makes them into books. And I said, can you write me a letter saying that I'm working for you for your research? And so that was the way I kind of got around that. But most of the time I have to provide a headed letter from my client saying, yes, we want to hire Amy to shoot this for our thing, or whatever that thing may be. And then if you're shooting directly for the event, you don't have to get accreditation, because the event will sort all of that out for you. You might have to go to, like when you arrive, you might have to go to the media center to sign up and say that, yes, I am who I am, and can I have a wristband, please? But other than that, most of the time you do, I mean, to get that side, or I think you could probably say, I am a professional photographer and I need to take pictures of your event for my work. I don't know, it might depend on how many photographers they have apply to do that. If they can literally, you know, have the capacity to let you do that, and they will probably put people who've got clients that they're working for first, but it's, you know, there's no harm in trying it.
And probably actually it could be working for a magazine. So I mean, exactly. It might be that they sort of see through the parish council newsletter, but you never know. It might be they just happen to have a slot, and the pictures will get in there, and we might get people from those 3 villages come along. So, you know, it's worth
exactly. If you were saying, you were shooting it for your parish journal, then who knows? It's you are working for somebody, whether you're getting paid for it or not, and you know, or if they're your friend or whatever. So it is always worth giving a go. Great.
Okay. Now, Harriet Hoskins again has asked, have you got any tips for photographing moving cars? VSCC trialing? I don't Does that mean something to you? Road trip?
Yep, the VSCC trialing. Yep.
Okay. And road trip type thing rather than racing.
Yes. So when shooting moving cars, like especially the VSCC stuff, it's a lot of people around. You can stand fairly close to where you're going to be shooting the car. So on road trips and stuff, you could stand as close as you want to the side of the road to get a picture of a car. I would suggest, usually I get, we're in a car on a road trip and we'll come around a corner. I'm like, it's a really nice bit of road. And I'll get out of the car and it'll be like whipping wind and rain in the middle of Wales or something. And I'll go clambering up in the wrong shoes, up kind of part way up a hill at the side. And I'll stand there and I'll tell my driver, just drive up and down the road a couple of times. So when you're doing panning shots, a lot of the time they are set up to an extent, or that they're going to come. It's not like, oh, that's a great shot, I'll just, there has to be a little bit of thought behind it. And again, so for example, with the VSCC and their car events, that if you stand at this one point, for example, you're going to have each competitor go past you at least once to try and get up their little bit of section of hill or whatever. So that you can stand yourself in a place, have a few practice runs and get used to photographing like kind of moving cars, because that is the thing, you will have to photograph take quite a lot of shots to get one that you're happy with. It doesn't have to be crack on focus. If you like that sense of movement, put it in black and white, it'll look great. But it's at the same time you can try, and especially so with the VSCC, they're usually very old cars that bounce around a lot themselves, let alone trying to do that bit smoothly. The smoother the car is, the smoother the road is, the crisper your image, but that's not always possible. So yeah, just shoot loads on a slow shutter speed with your f-stop that kind of match the exposure. And that is, I tend to shoot also on a fairly wide lens, but that's just because my 35mm, because I like that feeling of being there. If you're shooting a road that's further away, it is easier to try and capture that movement, because your physical matching your camera lens to that car is smoother motion, rather than if it's wider, it's like slow. So it's gone past and it's slow. And that's a change of movement. So to try and keep your body moving to the same can be quite difficult. So longer lens can make it a little bit easier, but then you can also have like up and down wiggle. If you're not holding your lens straight, you can get things like the single leg tripods to help you out, but it depends on what you want to do. I don't use those. I just think I'll go for it and see what I get, and usually 1 in 10 will be crisp, or crisp enough that I'm happy with.
And you've been practicing quite a while.
Yes.
What does VSCC stand for?
The VSC, like,
what is it?
Vintage. So I know the VSCC, I should really know this, as a basically a club that is vintage, like in classic racing cars and sports
is it vintage sport car? Some club?
something. You know what? My handy assistant will probably know, because I think he is part of the association. I know it is.
It's a club.
Super old car club. Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. Just to get that clear.
You're welcome. I was so helpful.
Last question. Sue has asked, great webinar, she says. What piece of equipment would you recommend for portrait photography for an amateur? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I showed you a picture of it when when it was all working. Honestly, the Nikon, well, for me, there's a Nikon 50mm 1.8. It's a, in terms of lenses, it's a cheap lens, and it allows you to really play with everything your camera has to offer. Whether you are on a crop frame camera or full frame camera, you can still get some beautiful images using that 50mm. And yeah, it was my first. I still have it in my camera bag underneath my desk right now, because it's a really cracking lens, and I probably carry it with me on nearly all of my shoots, even if I rarely ever take it out, because I love the 35mm so much. But it's a great safety net of a lens, and that you'll be able to get some genuinely, whatever you're shooting in portraiture wise, whether you're taking a portrait of a car or people, you're going to get some really nice images. So yeah, I would say that. And I think you can even get them fairly cheap on eBay now as well. You don't have to get everything brand new, because people upgrade their gear so much. So yeah, it's a 50mm 1.8, I would say.
Okay, good answer. And it's not a particularly bulky lens as well, is it?
No, it's tiny. It's like this big. It's not heavy or anything. So
you can just slip it in your bag, and if you don't use it, say, well, you've got it there if you do need to use it.
Exactly. I think it's the smallest lens I have.
Sorry. Right. Okay. So, but 1.8, you can get nice bokeh, however you like to pronounce it, as well. Out of focus areas. Very nice.
Yep.
And apparently, Vintage Sport Car Club.
Vintage Sports Car Club. Yeah, there we are.
There we go.
I wasn't too far off the vintage sports and cars and clubs.
We were on the way. So Amy, thank you so much. That was a really interesting talk. I love seeing your pictures, and well done for battling through the technical issues, whatever was going on there. It was probably America plugging in and sucking all the internet out or something like that. But thank you for that. Thank you for all of your time in putting that together and going through all those questions with us. That's really great.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience in that as well. And yeah, no, I really appreciate coming on, and yeah, all of your lovely questions. And it's also really great to know that I'm talking to a room of women about photography as well, and it's a total change to me. I've never done so. Thank you all really for showing up and yeah, and watching this.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, and you too.
Okay. Bye bye.